Better. Oh, couple things first. Um, Forgot to shave, so you guys get to stare at my rugged facial hair for the duration. But on the bright side, it'll probably be a short one. Also, finally got the ball rolling on this concrete countertop that I've been emptying bottles since last November for. So that is exciting. Ah, man, I've been stuck. I've had this mindset about fasting lately, but I'll try to mostly stay out of it because I know how much a lot of us like our food and our coffee. I feel like I'm about to get lynched every time somebody at church finds out I don't really like coffee. It's like I slapped Jesus in the face or something. Anyway, what really has been in my head lately is just getting in shape for the future, man. Like not getting stuck on works or on our efforts or what we can do or how far we've come or what the past is or anything. It's really isn't our whole thing just about striving to be better friends with God, to be more of an avenue for Him on this planet? That yeah, there's different ways we can enhance that and do our part to bring ourselves closer to God, because He's already put His offer on the table. I mean, like reading the Bible, just getting it in you. That gives us a blueprint of what we're becoming, of how to know God, of how to hear from God, of His parameters and His boundaries, who He is. And praying in tongues, it's there's a couple different things, but it builds up that strength in the part of us that's godly, that we may not see that much of, but that's one of the primary purposes of it, just with our own personal development. And with fasting, that the Bible calls it leaven, like the leaven of the Pharisees. Fasting helps make sure that we know we're still human. I don't want to tell how I know that, but I was a little ways into a fast recently, and all I wanted to do was just smack somebody repeatedly, and then make sure they knew that I thought they sucked at their job. But hey, fasting helped bring that out so I can deal with it. And I've been trying. I'm getting there, man. Praying in tongues is a good compliment for that because it gives me the strength to deal with it. And then spending time with God, man, just that one-on-one worship time. That's where we learn to retain our peace, where we learn to just plant ourselves in Him, no matter what else comes. We know His presence, and we know His heart, and we know what's not His presence, and we know what's not His heart. But really, all these exercises, the disciplines, are about becoming more like Christ. Like, when we can say it's on crime shows, when they find the body and then they got that chalk outline, it's like, one example is we're trying to put our bodies in the outline, that chalk outline of Christ. Because really, isn't that what God blesses? Isn't that where He really establishes His full-time presence? is in Christ. I mean, can we really argue that? So the problem then is we, or I, am just not Christ-like enough. And I can scoff and hem-haw and do all that in front of everyone else, but if I still say I got a heart for God, man, He's going to make sure that there is no confusion about what's keeping me from Him. And lately, it's been some of that deeper down pride. It's got the fibrous root system instead of the tap root. Don't come up that easy. But he helped me knock that loose. And I was talking to him one day. I was like, "This is like a spiritual kidney stone, isn't it?" He's like, "Well, that's a lot bigger than a kidney stone." And then that was when he started telling me that I needed to do some fasting and break up that spiritual kidney stone, so it's not just detached, but still a part of me. You know what I'm saying? It's not a thing fasting does. And I don't know, I'm not a history nerd by any means. No matter what, no matter how much Carrie has tried to tell me about history, I usually just turn it into a joke. So, she'd be the kind of person to ask about historically things that have gotten the ball rolling as far as what God's bringing together, what the devil's trying to do on this planet right now, and what God's doing to bring all these loose ends and weave it into something beautiful, something glorious, just amazing for Him. And she's talked about stuff that's happened this century. God's talked to me a lot about judgment, and I know there's still more than I want to learn. But there's things that happen spiritually that take a while to play out through linear time, if I'm explaining that right. And there's stuff that's been going on spiritually for decades at least now, and God's starting to weave things together, and things are getting a lot tighter. I talked about narrowing grace before, and it's basically that, man. If we're not under the canopy of Jesus, where are we going to get our protection from? There's grace in ignorance, yeah, but you can only stay dumb for so long. And then you're just running on fumes, man. All you got left is excuses. But if that ball's already rolling, man, what excuse do we have to not be doing our part? I mean, yeah, I would probably be a little embarrassed to show you guys a log of my time, of how I've spent this last week or 2 weeks or however long. But who wouldn't feel a little bit of embarrassment to do the same? Have like some corporate accountability of logging our time. But it's getting to that point where that's what we got to do, man. That's what we got to do. It's not like, well, God's judgment's coming no matter what. There's no ifs, no ands, no buts. It's going to happen. Just like the earth is in a state of decay. Hoping that something's going to change ain't going to make a difference, man. It's where are we with God? Man, is our heart for him? Are we hiding behind stuff? Are we protecting ourselves from God because it's uncomfortable? Because we're scared? There's coming time sooner rather than later where, as we continue to do that, to make a habit of it, to make a lifestyle of avoiding certain particular things from God, convictions or whatever, where we're going to have the opportunity for him to ask it to us face to face. Like 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about communion. I think it was chapter 11. Taking communion lightly. One's hungry, another's drunk. What is this? They don't discern rightly the body and the blood of Christ. And that is why some have fallen asleep early. Communion is a judgment you bring on yourself voluntarily. It's like, hey God, let's get to work here. If there's anything that I am still struggling with in front of you that I know I am without excuse for, and that I have absolutely been more than empowered to deal with, please get with me, man. Take me step by step on how to fix it, because I don't want that in my life anymore. That's communion, man. If you want to judge yourself, you better not take it lightly. Man, I was making a habit of communion for a while when I was living in my apartment, and I was so tired one day. I ended up, I had my wheat thins, and I had my I don't know what kind of juice it was, orange juice or grape, cranberry, whatever. And I assumed the position, elbows on the bed, knees on the floor, and I just started talking to God. And then my head just went, I don't know how long I was asleep, but when I woke up, I knew God wasn't all that thrilled about me having passed out in the courtroom. But hey, man, it was one of those things that is never going to happen again. Because that communion time, man, that's where God is judge and king. He's not in that friendship position. Well, it's not that he's not, but his primary role during that time is judge. You don't want to fall asleep in God's courtroom. Learn that the hard way. But, man, excuses, we cannot keep hiding behind them. I don't want to be I don't want to be the one that says something and then here in like 5 years or 10 years or however long, then what I'm saying actually means something. Because this, I don't know how much it matters how anybody else feels about it, but I know beyond any doubt that this isn't speculation. This is a spiritual absolute. I'm not putting a time frame on it because I'm not one of those people. If I was, I would also be giving you an opportunity to send me money. Really, man, what do we have to be afraid of with God? He's got our best intentions in mind, man, our absolute best intentions. His heart, man, he wants to impart to become our heart. And his wisdom, his strength, his confidence, that's the stuff that he's wanting to impart. But most of the time, our wisdom and our strength and our confidence is what's in the way of him imparting most anything to us. I hope any of these people that I know in Christian circles, or well, any of these people that I'm friends with in Christian circles, don't want to just play church. I've told God a, 1,000 times, I don't want to be one of those people that can get everybody and their mother healed and then dies of some sickness, or get so misled that they think they're hearing God and that God is telling them that they're Elijah to come, that they are God made flesh. I don't want to be one of those people. If that means embracing ugly truths about myself, just so I can get them away from me and make some more room for God in my own life, hey man, it's worth it. Just like going without food, how that will really expose the part of you that's not God, or the part of you that is God, depending on how far along you might be. In my case, I was in the former of the descriptions. But if exposing that stuff means getting another snake out of the hole that it's built in my soul, man, it shouldn't mean lashing out like a spoiled little brat. But if that's what's in you, man, that's what's going to come out, and that's what's got to be dealt with. And in my case, that may or may not have been what came out. But there was towards the end of the fast, I was not being very graceful towards anybody. It just got to the point, man, where I was at work. I think I'd lost I don't know how much weight I lost, but it was not pleasant to work in a walk-in refrigerator where it was 45 degrees. So, man, I just put my headphones on. I just wanted to be left alone. Just don't talk to me. Let me do my thing. And turns out I was not the most graceful about that either. I did manage to keep my mouth shut, but my actions were a giveaway. You know, we're all somewhere, man. If we're not striving to be in the same place, then yeah, we got something to talk about. But otherwise, man, as long as we're all trying to be unified, let's focus on the common ground. If not, let's focus on making some common ground through Jesus. All right. So, with all that being said, man, I've been listening to Acts a lot lately, going through it, and I really, really like how Paul lived. Man, I don't know if I'll ever get over that one. But then going through his epistles, man, the way he made sure that God couldn't hold him accountable for keeping his mouth shut, for one single person going to hell because Paul didn't say anything. And that's a good enough example for me. And if that means embracing what God's saying at the expense of myself, man, how can we even consider it a loss? Whether or not we can see what God has lined up for us, man. We've got His Word. We've got His promise. And He doesn't break His promise. There's just stipulations on the things that He wants to give us. Kind of like a trust fund. If there's just one thing I could get across, don't be afraid Man, there have been times I used to a lot more than now. I would just write down conversations with God because that was how I helped maintain my train of thought. And if something did screw up my focus, something did interrupt me, I was able to just kind of go back a couple lines and pick it right back up. And there was times, man, even even one time just in the last 2 or 3 months where I knew it was time to start writing something down. And so I started. Something just wasn't clicking, man. Something didn't fit right with me, with the way this conversation was coming across. So I stopped and I was like, hey, God, what's the deal here? What's going on? You changed clothes, why does this feel different? And there was just that silence where you got that awkward, awful moment of realizing just, man, I almost fell for it. You just get to know God. Something like that's not going to happen before you have a good grasp of who God is. I promise that. So don't be afraid of stepping out there. But also, don't be afraid, don't be too proud of making sure it's God. God's not afraid to keep proving himself and keep proving himself until you get it. But he also knows when you get it. So if you keep trying to prove him to you after that point, then he'll have a come to Jesus chat with you. But man, don't matter where you're at. He's willing to meet you where you're. He's willing to meet you where you're at, as long as you got your heart turned toward him. That's the biggest thing, man. You can be 10 miles further ahead of me. If God's over here and your heart's over there, man, you ain't getting a whole lot further and I'll be catching up. Or you can be 30 miles behind me. God's over here and my heart's kind of a little bit off. Now you stay on that straight course, you'll take me over. Just don't be afraid. Man, there's going to be plenty more reasons to feel discouragement. But just because we watch movies where there has to be a conflict in order for entertainment to be consummated, doesn't mean there's any conflict at all between God and anything else, man. The conflict is just me and myself. Oh, wretched man that I am. It's about me wanting to keep God's law, and part of me wanting to not so much abstain from the lusts of the flesh. That's where the conflict is, man. It's not about God and anything else. What's going to stand up against God anyway? Nothing. So as long as we're on the same page as him, the best we know how to be, what's slowing us down but ourselves? If you don't know how to fast, it's about suffering for a little while. Man, I don't even want to. Anyway, the longest fast I've ever done was 21 days straight. But I didn't work up. No, I did work up to that. I didn't just all of a sudden, I got saved and then believed in my heart and confessed with my mouth, and then the next week God's like, hey, let's skip food for 3 weeks. It was not at all like that. It was every other day for quite a while, and then a 3-day fast, and then 7, and then 7, and then 7, and then a 21. And you know, you just work with where you're at. If it means just skipping a meal, start there. If it means eating less during a meal, start there. But it's about making sure that we don't stay dominated by our own soul, by our own flesh, by our own desires. If I want 12 donuts and I eat 11, and I somehow am capable of eating the 12th one, but I don't, that's a start. I like to joke around with Carrie, because she just tells me I'm like a locust. I'll just binge on something. Like, there was one time I just wanted lemon squares, so I made lemon squares. And then I wanted more, so I made some more. And then I still wanted more, so I made some more. There was about a week there where I think I had 5 pans of lemon squares, just all by myself. That might be an example of not abstaining from the lusts of the flesh. Not that it controlled me, but I was like, man, that sounds good. I'll have that. And then it was good, so I had another. But, man, you start where you're at. If it means having 4 pans of lemon squares in a week instead of 5, hey, you're making progress, baby. But do not despise the day of humble beginnings. That's something God never stopped reminding me of. It still hasn't. About how, man, you start small. You're going to have that substance, that godly substance in you that nobody can take away. You'd have to forfeit it if it ever leaves your grasp. But if we get saved and then we just take these quick promotions up and up and up, we're setting ourselves up for disaster. So, if it means having 11 donuts, skip the 12. Go find some hobo on the street and give it to him. And then tell him about the love of God and how you're learning to sacrifice, and then watch him eat that donut. But, man, our main focus right now has to be becoming more like Christ. That's what's going to keep us out of trouble. That's what's going to keep us away from the devil. Well, that's what's going to keep us within God's protection from the devil. Like a roaring lion. But the Lord is my shepherd. His rod and his staff comfort me. And that's because I'm finally starting to get a much clearer picture of who he is. And all he wants from me is to be like him, is to do my part. And he actually wants to empower me to do it. Man, how much better than that can you get? Really? Anyway, love to you guys, and I think because, well, here's all the disclaimers now while I'm still thinking about them. So, I think what happened was Pam and Bernard are wanting me to do another broadcast next week, and then I'm taking the next week after that off because my folks are coming into town, and as much as I love you guys, I'm making time for my folks. And then the week after that is the conference, and then everything's shutting down so we can go play church at the prayer center, and so I can go in and have their bagels with their strawberry cream cheese, which is the highlight of every conference for me. And then I think the week after that, second week of October, we will be back in action. If I'm wrong, then I guess we'll all get a newsletter letting everybody know how wrong I am. So, love you guys, and I guess we'll see you sooner than usual. Or, well, I guess you'll see me sooner than usual. And I won't have this incredibly masculine beard next time either. Alright, I'm done talking. So, love you. See you later.